Andy O'Brien joining us on Sunday Brunch. Andy, how's it going? Thanks for the time. Great to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
So much that I'm excited to talk about with you. And of course, we're going to get into Kvench a little bit later on in the talk. But as a high performance trainer, a fitness guy, I'm interested. Everyone's got different techniques that they believe in. So many high performance elite athletes seem to flock to you. What are your core tenets of your approach to fitness that you believe in so highly?
Well, I think there's not really a whole lot of secrets or magic. I think generally we can look at the marketplace that way. Everyone's trying to differentiate themselves from one another, and so each person has their own proprietary way of doing things. But generally, a lot of athletes start out with basics. They're building strength, they're building conditioning, range of motion, and as you funnel up to the high levels and you get up to the elite athletes, to the point where everyone has really accomplished these fundamentals, now the conversation gets a little bit more focused and targeted around that athlete and their game. And that's where you have to be creative. You have to start studying the sport, understanding how a winger and a centerman might be different. A centerman who attacks off the rush with a lot of speed is different than a centerman who's a bit more defensive, that has to come down low and play a little bit more physical and stop and start a bit more. So I think it really starts out with the basics, and then as you start to funnel up to the top, you get a little bit more targeted at the individual.
Well, so to me, that sounds like treat everybody as an individual and recognize that fitness is not just a monolithic approach, no matter what it is that you're looking to be the best at. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely fair. I think we see this in medicine a little bit, where you have essentially like standardized practices and protocols. You get a diagnosis, you have a certain type of treatment, and that's really evolving into precision medicine, where you can look at each individual as their own unique person that needs their own unique plan. And definitely, I think the sport performance way works that way. I think it's fairly generic across the board, and you have these best practices that work well at the basic level. And the higher you get, the more targeted and specific it needs to be.
So when you look at a guy like Sidney Crosby, and he's somebody that you've trained for quite some time, he continues to work with you. Here he is at the age of 37. He's on pace again for around 90 points. Now, we all know that Sid is an incredible player, is one of the greatest of all time. Quite frankly, I think he should end up on the Mount Rushmore, if you will, of guys who have played the game. He's that good. But we all know a player who's even better, and that's Father Time, and Father Time never loses. But at least at this point, it seems he is losing to Sidney Crosby. What does Sid do in terms of his approach that has allowed him to continually, seemingly, defy age?
Well, I think it's really the same thing that has allowed him to become a better player over time. Like, if you look early in his career, he's a very dominant offensive player. I think it was his second year. He had 120 points. He was MVP, won the Art Ross Trophy. But he had 59 points in even strength and 61 points in the power play that year. And, I think last year, he had 70 some points at even strength, right? So I think if you look at his game as it's evolved over the 20 years or so, he's become better at face-offs. He's been better defensively. He's become more well-rounded. And I think he's at the point where he's one of the best well-rounded overall players, 200-foot players to ever play the game. And so I think the same applies to his off-ice. It's just constantly learning, not just achieving the minimum standard, making sure he comes in fit, making sure he shows up every day to work out, but it's constantly learning, constantly evaluating where the areas of opportunity are. And then he's just one of those guys that's all in. There's nothing that he's not willing to do. And so I think that applies to the same on the ice and off the ice for him.
How has his training evolved from when you first started working with him, when he was early in his career, to now where he's very much at the back part of his career, but nonetheless continuing to have a ton of success?
Well, I think the big thing for any player that's getting up into their mid-30s is the injury prevention component becomes a bit more front and center. They have the experience, they have the intelligence and the hockey IQ, and they understand themselves as players, and then you just really want to make sure that they're healthy and that they're recovering. So I think the emphasis on recovery and just overall wear and tear and making sure that, he's in a position to be able to play 82 games on a regular basis is much more of the conversation now than it was when he was younger. But at the same time, the game has really changed a lot, Dave. So I think if you look back to some of those teams that they had that were really strong in the peak of his career, like when Jerome McGinley got traded to the Penguins, they were playing against Boston. I forget which round it was. It might have been the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got swept. And he's playing head-to-head with Zdeno Chara on a nightly basis. And, now you're more likely to play against a player who's 5'9" than 6'9". And so, Sid early in his career was, tasked with having to hang on to pucks against really big D, and the conversation was a lot more around strength. And now, as the game's really evolved, you're starting to see smaller, faster players. The game is a lot faster. The game's a lot more offensive. So, I think because he's naturally so strong, I think that strength part of the game and learning how to hang on to pucks down low is a bit easier now than it was years ago, and having to stand in front of the net, for example, against these big guys, Darian Hatcher, for example, when he first came into the league, Chris Pronger. You just don't have those guys anymore. And so now it's really about the quickness. So it's just that foot speed, the multi-directional athleticism, getting speed through the middle of the ice and being able to, hang with the young guys, so to speak.
With Andy O'Brien here on Sunday Brunch. He's a high-performance trainer of guys like Sidney Crosby, Nate McKinnon, John Tavares, among others, director of player health and performance with Cortex Management, and behind the new hydration drink Kvench. On Nathan McKinnon, you talk about power. There are not as many physical players in the game nowadays, as you mentioned, guys like Pronger and Chara and all that, but one who is Nathan McKinnon. And Andy, I always joke, and I say it obviously tongue-in-cheek, but you watch this guy play, and holy cow, if he went to Spain to participate in the running of the Bulls, he would not be running from the Bulls. The Bulls would be running from Nathan McKinnon, because that's what he looks like when he flies through the neutral zone with such strength, but also at a level with such elite skill. Can you put into perspective what Nate's capable of in the gym, I guess from a quantifiable perspective, that'll help us understand the strength that we see with our eyes when we watch him play?
Yeah, there's so much to it. I mean, it could probably, go on for an hour about all the different ways that Nate is gifted and special. But there was one of the things I try to do, I'm working with individual players that are spread out in different locations. So each summer, once or twice a year, I try to get everybody together. We do these kind of mini camps, and they compete against each other, train with each other. And one of the things that when Nate, I think, was going into his rookie year, so he was about 17, I had a bunch of players who were all in their prime. You had Sid, you had John Tavares, Jeff Skinner, a bunch of players that were, probably about 7 or 8 NHL players came down to Halifax to train. And this was the first time Nate really was going against a group of those types of players. And we were training for 3 days, I think, and we went and did a really steep hill, and we did 10 sprints on this hill after we had done a lift and done a skate on that day. And it was just really a test mentally to kind of see where the players were and compete against each other. And, Nate just sort of demolished everybody in that drill. And I sort of remember the other players, their fastest run would be in the first rep or the second rep, and they'd slowly get fatigued. And then Nate would just kind of stay the same. And he was just sort of crushing everybody. He was very unapologetic. He was very happy to assert himself and say, let's go, let's see what you guys are capable of. And so I think just the mentality of him being aggressive and dominant has always been there. He loves to go head to head, loves to be challenged by people. And I think he just takes that every single game. You just see that aggression. You see him wanting to take people on, wanting to assert himself as a better player. He has a real alpha component to him. And so I think that's really first and foremost what he brings. He brings that in the gym every single day. In fact, it's hard to create variations in intensity with Nate with anything you do, because he just has this, sheer dominance into his personality. And so I think that's really where it starts. And beyond that, he has a pretty unique combination of power and endurance. And typically you see players are built for one or the other. Most powerful athletes don't have the best endurance, and the endurance athletes don't have the most power. And he certainly combines both, and he's got a really high pain tolerance. So even when he fatigues mentally, he's almost unaware of that fatigue. He just keeps bringing it at these high intensities. So he's got a lot of qualities there, but I think it really first and foremost starts with his personality and just that exuberance of dominance that he has.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty lethal combination when you put all those facets together. You end up with the type of guy that we see on a nightly basis, and easily one of the most dominant players in the NHL. With Andy O'Brien, whether you're an elite athlete, whether you're a regular person, the one common thread is you always need to hydrate properly. And you have worked with Cizzle brands to develop a new hydration drink called Quench that elite athletes are using, pro sports teams are getting behind, but also benefits the regular guy and girl as well. Tell us about Quench, the journey to develop the drink, and why you believe that it's so beneficial, not just to the best athletes that we see, but quite honestly, to everybody looking to hydrate properly.
Well, Quench is part of Cizzle Brands, and Cizzle Brands is a house of brands, and our goal is to really bring the best possible products to the everyday person. And so we want to create gold standard, best-in-class products across the board. So we have another brand called Spoken that's coming out, and we have a handful of other products that are going to be launched in 2025. So we'll have a variety of products that help us accomplish that, but we wanted to start in hydration, and that is really what Quench is all about. And hydration to the pro athletes is actually very, it's actually kind of something that you learn at a really young age. You learn that hydration is really important. You learn how to hydrate before, during, and after competition. And to the everyday person, it's maybe a little bit less obvious, but the needs for hydration are actually pretty high. So somewhere around like 2 liters of water or fluids a day is the starting point. And as you get physically active beyond that, you actually you have to increase more. And so for us, when we were launching Cizzle Brands and Quench, we're really trying to say, what are the things that we need to help people do in order to become more healthy? And as it turns out, the amount of sugar and processed foods and artificial ingredients that people take in is really high, and a vast majority of that sugar comes in the form of hydration. So whether it's soda pop, whether it's juices, whether it's chocolate milks, whoever it might be. And so not a lot of people like to just drink water all the time. They like things that have taste. And so what we're really accomplishing with Quench is it's an electrolyte drink that's naturally sweetened, that doesn't have any sugar, it doesn't have any artificial ingredients. And we formulated it so that it meets the standards in terms of quality ingredients of the best athletes, but we also formulated it with a balance so that it's very versatile and it can be, drank by pretty much anyone. And so we're really just hoping to get some of the sugar and the processed ingredients and artificial ingredients out of people's diets. So trying to get them to convert off some of those sweetened beverages to Quench, and also just having the reassurance that this is formulated to be good enough for the top athletes in the world.
What's the process been like bringing it to market? I know there's been a lot of grassroots efforts to do so here in Toronto. Where are you at with bringing it to market, and where would you like to see the drink grow over the next number of months?
Well, it was actually launched in May, so I think it was end of May that we launched it. It's been extremely well received, very popular so far. So it's actually been already very successful, and we have a great team of people that have been able to get the product out there. And yeah, we're just trying to introduce it to more people, have them try it. And our goal is always to get feedback. We want to try to, rather than just market the product, we always want to try to talk to people, whether it's the athletes, whether it's the coaches, the nutritionists, or just general population, everything from taste, texture, quality. And we're always trying to refine our process to make the best possible ingredients. So I think we're just continuing to grow and continue to add products and take on the feedback along the way.
Well, it's an exciting initiative to be sure, and you'll be pleased to know that I have seen ads pop up that I was aware of the drink prior to hearing from Nicole earlier on in the week. So it is getting traction. I was aware of it, and I love the name of the drink, Quench. How did you arrive at that? I just think that's so clever. It's a fun word to say. It just sticks in your mind. How did you arrive at that name for the drink?
Yeah, well, our marketing team at Cizzle Brands did a great job with that, and I think we just have a good group of people that really understand the marketing product and something that really stands out. And my job is really just to be able to formulate the product. And what I've enjoyed is I haven't really had to compromise. Like, the team really has this belief that you can make the best products and make them available for people, and you have to be a little bit innovative to do that. But we're not about compromising the quality of the product to get it out to the masses. We're really trying to maintain the quality while we do that. And I think, Nate is kind of our poster boy for Quench. And we do have a number of other athletes across different sports that we're working with as well. Cole Caulfield is also endorsing it on the hockey side, Gavin McKenna. But we also have Andrew Wiggins. We have Adriana Leon. So we've really just tried to engage some of the athletes that are associated with the brand. And we love being involved with Nate because he's just so well respected by other NHL players, and he would never put his name on something that he didn't believe in. So we have a really good thing going there.
Yeah, what was that story a couple of years ago, I think, came out where he was in the locker room basically telling guys what you're eating is complete garbage right now, and it took on a little bit of a like, is he literally the type of guy that will go to a guy and be like, are you kidding me right now with what you're eating and drinking? Like, that's just not nearly good enough.
Oh yeah. Like Nate's, he's not afraid to take something right out of your hand and tell you you're not eating that today. So, he's good, and I think that is the one thing that people respect about Nate. Nate, he's very, you get what you see with Nate. He's a very clear and simple guy, but he's very dedicated and very focused, and he makes people around him better. And I think he backs it up with what he does on a day-to-day basis. He's definitely a lead by example guy. He's very vocal, but I think that I've seen him time in and time out in Colorado pull his team into the fight, very similar to what Sid does. And I think that's what all the great leaders do. And I think he's really kind of been that modern day person that is very dialed in with respect to nutrition, supplementation, training, recovery, and whatnot.
Well, listen, Andy, this was a really, really fun chat. I really appreciated your time. All the best with Kvench moving forward with Cizzle Brands. I'd love to get you on again down the road when the time is right, when you can add expertise, because quite honestly, few can offer expertise on subjects like this better than you. So thanks for the time. All the best, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Dave. All the best. Thanks again.
Andy O'Brien, high-performance trainer, director, player health, and performance Cortex management, and the founder and creator behind the new hydration drink, Kvench.